information be more accessible and it's more interactive as well. So this is on the right-hand side, a screenshot of our published course syllabus for Chem 123. And then so this is just page 1, and we have 7 pages of that. So what I had done is that I use 2 things. One is infographic, do that on Canva, not Canvas, Canva. So I'll make kind of something like this on the right-hand side, and how we can visualize our course syllabus. So here I have the important things that students always need: contact us, and learning tips, student resources, learning outcome, basically following that 7-page document. And here we have the grade breakdown, which is what they usually have the most questions for, and the dates of the midterms. And then after that, I use H5P. So H5P is a platform that you can make your things more interactive, and it's also very versatile. So you can download other people's documents and use it as a template yourself, or you can publish it and other people can use it as well, right? So here is kind of like my workflow of how I can create this document on H5P. So essentially what I'm doing is I forgot the image hotspots. There it is, image hotspots. And so I use this infographic as my background, and I put hotspots where and so for instance here, it toggles here, and then you can type in the text, which is coming from our 7-page document. So the ultimate goal is that now it becomes a clickable infographic. So students can toggle towards any of these buttons, and then things will pop up. And then so that way it's more like a website experience. So the way that I make this, there are 2 ways you can create H5P. One is use H5P website. I actually downloaded the standalone software to my laptop. It's called Lumi, which is free. So you can do that as well. And then I create this every year for each course that I'm teaching. So I just wanted to show you how it looks like. Actually, I think, where?
It should be on Chrome.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, right here. So this is the end product. Yeah. So when I click contact us, and this will pop up, and students can see the office hours and availabilities. Here is the grade breakdown, explaining the clicker activities. Here we talk about the midterms with some of the midterm policies. So this will become a lot more visual and a lot more interactive. And then to embed this onto Canvas is actually not hard. So you can export this as I think it's called SCORM package. It took me a while to figure it out, but it's called SCORM package. I don't really know what SCORM means, but then you can import this onto as a page onto Canvas, and you can use as a page, and then you can link your pages into different Canvas sites. So yeah, so that's what I have. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes.
Questions.
So is actually more about the video. Do you have some control over like the placement of those hotspots or coloring, or is it pretty? No.
You mean like the infographic?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so the pluses is just when you do that on H5P and you say this is my hotspot, and the pluses will show up after you finish your document. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm not sure. That's a good question. Oh yes.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh yes. Yeah. So the question is, for the text documents, when I click on something, then this whole box shows up. The question is, can you do a control F? I'm not sure. Let's try it. I think you can. Let's say basic. Oh yeah, it's right there. But I think it's just within the text, not other text boxes. Yeah, so we do publish the 7-page document as well. So if students want to like just didn't know which category it is, they can search that one. So yeah, so this is something I present on the first day as well. So I would say, here's where you find the syllabus, and then here is the visual one. You have both, and then this is how you can use them. Yeah. Any other?
If you may not have had this happen.
Yeah. Right, I do, yeah, I do. I think, so I had to go through, sorry, the question was, if I update my syllabus, do I have to go through the whole thing again? And from my personal experience, I do. Maybe there are better ways. I haven't been able to get much answer on that. Because when I started this, there wasn't much support on H5P from the campus. And so maybe what I'm doing is a very roundabout way, so I'm not sure. Yeah, yeah. Oh. How do I find it again? Oh, here. Can you use Canvas in immersive? I haven't tried the immersive reader function, so that is something I'm going to, that's a good suggestion. Haven't thought about that. Oh, yeah, that's you could see. Can you use Canvas immersive reader to access H5P content for those who need the function for accessibility? And I haven't explored that, so I'm not sure.
But you're also providing the.
Yes.
PDF.
Yes, there is that PDF document. Yeah. Yeah.
It's in.
Just verbally, I didn't gather formal feedback, but people like, oh yeah, this is so pretty, it's so much easier. But you know, in-person feedback, something that feel like it's almost like a starter point for a conversation. They're finding something to talk about. So I don't know how, you know, on a larger scale, how impactful it is.
Reduce the number of emails.
Yeah, I think so for my experience. I also do like in-class quizzes, like kind of like a clicker quiz, is to say when is the midterm, and then they tend to have to be forced to interact with the syllabus more often. So maybe that was another reason, but I don't know if it's all from the infographic. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Follow-up question, actually, too, that's you. So you paste the syllabus on the school staff? I would just like a PDF in there, because then all the.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are like, I'm.
Yeah.
And then.
PDF and then this now. Yeah. 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 Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Drop that image, looks like it could, I don't want to do.
Yes.
Or.
So right to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's a slide advance if you need it, and
Okay.
then just remember during the question period to summarize.
Okay.
Yes. Although I can't see the Zoom chat. Do I need my note? Do I need this? Yes, and then I can see the chat. Okay, perfect. Great. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see all of you. I guess a lot of this was inspired before the pandemic at our teaching and learning conference. If any of you were there, we got a book called Small Teaching by James Lang. And that has kind of been pretty formative, I think, for me. And I use it a lot when I work with grad students or postdocs who want to learn more about teaching and learning. And I think before that, I thought, well, you know, I really want to do this with my course, but you know, you felt like it had to be this big change. And I've kind of started just to embrace that these small changes can have big impacts. So I thought I would share just a couple of things that I've done that I feel like have helped my life as a teacher, but also helped the students quite a bit. And the first one was student feedback. During the pandemic, we continually learned that students wanted like clear communication, organized structure, like that just makes their lives a lot easier from a learning perspective, and learning from some colleagues. So at the time, I had colleagues who would send out like a Canvas message that would just talk a little bit about what the students were going to do the next week. And I kind of took that and formalized it a little bit more into Canvas. And I've been doing this now for 3 years, and I find it really helped. And I have less students having to reach out for questions. So this is kind of what my Canvas kind of looks like. And these are the two big things that have been pretty instrumental. So instead of just having the readings and the course outline, I just kind of embed the readings into the prep. So they kind of know where they can go to get that. And those are all kind of public from the start of the class. And then every week we have a week plan. And that just kind of gives students an idea or more specific idea of what we're going to be doing. So this just gives you a little sense of what the week prep looks like. And then this is kind of each of the plan. So for every week, I remind them of what the prep work is, just in case they haven't opened the prep work. I talk a little bit about what the learning outcomes are for the week on Tuesday. I was teaching on Tuesday and Thursday last term. Then they do the learning outcomes. So these are kind of at the start of on the PowerPoint as well in the start of the lecture, and then these are on the PowerPoint at the end. And then I remind them of things that are upcoming. And I found that, you know, a lot of times before the pandemic, I would just say those things in class, but then not every student's there. And it's just these simple things of, I think, putting it into that structure. And now it is more work the first time you do it because you kind of have to make the week plans. But then as soon as you do that for one semester, it gets easier and easier. So just some simple things. And I find that what I feel like has helped me get better at my teaching is learning all these simple things or little things that other faculty have brought to the table as well. The other thing is we've talked to this a little bit, and I'm sure many of you are familiar in the room, but again, sometimes I used to think, oh, I'm going to have to really do a whole course redesign if I want more active learning, or I have to be super creative. But the James Lang and just that idea of how do you structure those in-class activities? And I used to always think, any questions? And yeah, I feel like, you know, having those predictive questions, having retrieval questions in the student response system has really helped. I love when I always cheer in front of my class when the response rate is 50% correct on a student response. So students, I think, find that a little interesting, that I'm excited that only 50% of the class has answered the question correctly. But that's the learning moment in the classroom for me, of being able to say, okay, let's like investigate a little bit more why we're at that 50% mark. And then we can come back to that same question. So I'll often use that question again as a retrieval question or a practice question to kind of get them back. So it just helps me a little bit more when I can move on. So just these kind of retrieval predictive practice questions. So if you haven't read the Small Teaching, super concise and just simple ways that you can integrate these in-class activities. And then the last thing that I've changed in the last 3 years is assignment deadlines, having a 48-hour no questions asked, late kind of flexibility. So wanting to move into more universal design, but then also realizing that we have TAs and they can't wait to mark everything at the end of the term, but also wanting to have some of that flexibility. So for my low stakes and my exams, there's no flexibility. The due date is the due date. It's kind of like if you have a SHRC or a CIHR and NSERC grant, like you're not going to get a grant deadline extension. And there are things in life that are not going to be extended. And then there's things that if I'm working on something for my director, I might say, hey, something's come up, and can I have an extra 2 days to get this to you? And they're like, yeah, sure. Like that's real life, I think. And our student, that's what real life's going to be like for our students. So we do the 48 hours. The average percentage over the last 3 years is 29% of the students have used it in assignment 1, more at the end of term when all those big assignments are due, 54%. That means 70% are still handing in on time for the first assignment. So TAs can start getting marking, and the 48 hours doesn't really make a difference in terms of the timing of getting feedback. And then still 50% are handing in assignment 2 on time. So I have little to almost no email in the term about, oh, can I have an extension? And part of this was also, if you're saying yes to those who are reaching out when they have legitimate reasons, maybe there's other students who have legitimate reasons, but they're fearful of reaching out. And so I wanted to kind of make it fair. And then they have some flexibility around their electives and when other big assignments are due to say, I'm going to take, 24 hours to do it this, to hand in this one a little bit later, because I know I have these other things Monday, Tuesday, where some other students have electives where things are Thursday, Friday, and so they hand in so that students have appreciated that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So the 48 hours left, there's no vote this in advance.
Yeah.
Is it, are they allowed to use it for more than one, or they can use it once?
No, they can use it for both times. It's not like if it was 24 hours, this is 24 hours, that it's 48 hours for both. It's in the course syllabus. I remind them. I do stress like the due date is this date. I want you to really work hard to get it in on this date. And when I talk about the due date, it's always that, but then I remind them that they have the 48-hour flex. Yeah. So I'm not calculating. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can't.
Doesn't happen. I'm very strict on that. And I think it's just because they realize I've given them the flexibility already. And so they're not going to ask. I mean, maybe like I've had 5 students in the last 3 years, but then I'm like, well, no, like unless you have an academic concession that's been approved by the unit, then yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
What do you function in?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so good question. The question was, how do we functionally manage this on Canvas? So I tell the TAs to mark everything and not worry about the late penalty. I go in and actually do the late penalty. So you can sort actually by late. And then I just click through, and anybody that's under the 2 days, because it tells you, right, 2 days. So I just don't do anything. And then anything that's above the 3 day or the 2 days, then I do it's 10% deduction per day. I honestly usually have less than 5 students in a class of 180 to 200 that are past the 2 days. Yeah, so it's worked well in terms of as the original due date. So it does come in late, but then I just scan them and then I only deduct for those past the 2 date. And it takes me usually like half an hour, not even like. Yeah. And I kind of always do that. I always set my assignments because if students get like we do academic concessions in our unit, not instructor by instructor. So if the student gets 7 days, then I don't have to go in and reset the open. I don't have to reopen the assignment. So it's just, then I know like that person got approved for 7 days. So I don't have to apply the late penalty. Whereas other students, I would have to apply. But yeah, it's been pretty easy to manage, to be honest. Way easier than having to say yes, no, yes, no. I don't know. Should I? I don't know. Yeah.
I have a question that personally. I did this change this year, but maybe.
Oh.
So change.
Yep. Yeah.
They only have.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question is on my kind of Canvas landing page, do they have access to assignment modules and everything? So the way I set up my courses, so HES, so Health and Exercise Sciences, we have a template homepage. So all of our courses have the same homepage. And then under the modules, my first module is like important contact information and just kind of gives office hours and TA contact and my contact. Then I have a big module on assignments, and that's where all the assignment stuff, and then I just go week by week by week. So week 1, and so then that's what, so this is where these are embedded. Yeah.
You turned off all the other navigation.
I don't turn them off necessarily. Yeah, I don't turn them off. Nope. So,
Oh, I really don't like having to go one to get to the assignment. But that's good. Never even realized I posted it publicly. Even though they're right there, because we don't like to the assignment. And then the other.
oh, so you know what I've done for the assignment button in the first box, I'd say all of instructions, guidelines, and resources are in this module. And so then I just redirect them to like, you got to go to the module. Like, I'm sorry, but you got to go to the module. Yeah. I do not put the information in, I don't put instruction in the assignment because I often give examples. So the question is like whether, how you structure that, but yeah, it's all in a module. And then I'll have like assignment 1 instructions, assignment 1 guidelines, like papers for assignment 1 rubric. So everything is assignment 1, it's in a module. And then in the assignment thing, I just say, please see assignment 1 module for all instructions, and yeah. So that it's easy, it's all in one. And then if you make any changes, you don't have to forget about.
Raymond, I think. Pretty sure. I'd have answered. Oh, you can find that and stuff. But
That's good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Raymond Lawrence. I'm a professor of computer science, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about chatbots that we've been building for the last 1.5 years. So the goal of this research is to build chatbots at UBC. There's lots of chatbots out there in the world, but UBC supported architecture to answer student questions. And because it's UBC hosted, we can now actually do educational research to figure out what questions students ask, because then we have all the data that's collected as part of that. So the research questions we have from the student perspective, will students use AI for academic support? Clearly they will outside of UBC support systems, but the question is, if an instructor puts up an AI system, will they use that? And will they use it for different things compared to what they would ask ChatGPT, for instance? Does AI integration reduce email volume to instructors? I have a feeling that's the case on my own sample, but I would love to have other instructors try this out and see if it makes a difference for them. And then from the instructor perspective, is this worth your time? Supporting an AI system on your own compared to just asking them to go somewhere else out there? And can you do it without technical expertise? I'm in computer science. That's fine for me to stand up a chatbot. For any instructor, will this be something you might want to do? So we have built a help system, which originally did not have AI. It spans the COVID years when I was trying to manage Zoom rooms in a 200-seat classroom, where it's basically an online queue. I actually use it for my multimodal office hours where they have to check in, either in person or online. And that way I can have not just me, but multiple TAs support at the same time. But that's not what this is about. I'm going to talk about the AI features because now we've added a chatbot and anytime questions. The chatbot is very similar to what you've seen out there. All of them now, if you go to a Google search, it'll give you an AI summary with resources. Ours does that too. The difference is that ChatGPT would not have access to. We've also done something similar to a discussion board where a student can post a question, and now the first response is not a human, but an AI answer comes back from the chatbot. And then the student can decide whether they like that answer or not. If they do, then that can be to a instructor to answer. And then the instructor TA has that AI generated answer, which often is fairly close. Then they can edit it and post it back. See it. This is kind of what this looks like live here. So this is the chat bot going on the side here. This is the online help queue. We actually had people online that were videoing this. They asked a question about Lab 6. We did that to ChatGPT. It wouldn't know what Lab 6 is material, but this does. This is now looking at the discussion board. They're going to post a question asking about office hours. Interestingly, in this case, I don't know if the material was good or not, but that one did not come back with a great answer. Came back with a very generic answer, but not office hours work for that time. And so the TA or the student go, I still need help. So at that point, now we've switched to the instructor view. Here's the questions that are outstanding. The instructor. And now that's visible to the students. They can also decide to multiple people might have that question. So this is. It was the student who built that, so they did the comment. And that's what the system looks like. So if you're interested in trying that out, we're really at this stage that I need more people to try this out. I have an ethics study that's already approved. We've already collected data from one course, which is mine. I'm working with education in Vancouver this summer and Indigenous 100, hopefully to deploy it over the summer, because this field's all about data. Figure out, does AI work or not? Some courses it might be great, others it will not. Key thing is, this is all hosted at UBC. You're not giving your information anywhere else. And it's pretty much as simple as just adding an invite link into your account. You could try it out. It's all CW login. It's that. Really what we're looking for is partners and people to try it out. And if it breaks, that's actually good news for us too. We want to figure out what works and what doesn't, what the boundary is. And thank you, everyone. Happy to answer questions.
To answer questions and please summarize them aloud for the video.
Yeah, go ahead, Samara.
Just how in or it's separately equivalent.
So the whole system is hosted outside of Canvas, but you put a link inside Canvas to get to the system. And the login is UBC login. So the students really won't notice the difference once they click the link and log in. Yeah. Yeah, here's the thing we're really excited about. So the question was, does the bot learn with failed answers? And what we're really hopeful on the research side is whenever the faculty, their TA, verifies an answer, we put that back in the database. So the next time it comes up, it's much more likely that chatbot's going to come back with the answer. So we're not training the AI technically, but we're actually providing verified answers. So next time that question comes up, it will be answered better by the chatbot. Yes, go ahead.
Two related questions. One, if you respect that.
Well, you can actually build it yourself. Like all you need to do is upload PDFs and it'll do it. And new in the last 2 months, we've actually got Canvas integration. So it will pull announcements and deadlines. And we're working on it to pull modules. So you could technically just point it at your Canvas course by September, and it could just pull your whole content. Yeah, so actually right now it works for assignments and announcements. That's already getting pulled in. What we don't have it is extracting the modules and the development. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. So what I was doing, I teach a bigger class. It's like 230. Whenever the TAs come on for their virtual office hours every day, I said, you check if there's any questions to answer. Okay. The system's also set up to email you, which I don't like because I'm trying to avoid email, but it'll notify you if there's a question sitting there that hasn't been answered. This is, you can imagine this is just a website at UBC. It's actually coursehelp.ubc.ca is where it's at. Yeah. So I'm curious to see if it helps other people. So in my course, I had 240 students, 500 and something chatbot questions, 115 emails, because I logged every email too as part of the research. So to see what questions are asked by email and what questions are asked by chatbot, and they're totally different. Questions asked by email are, I want an assignment extension, or please regrade my assignment. Those don't go away with the chatbot. It won't. But some of the common stuff like syllabus questions, those don't happen. Yeah, and so this is where I want to figure out what the boundaries are. Intentionally, I did not post I didn't link my lab assignments when I did it my first semester, because I didn't want them to have the AI answer it. I don't know if that's a good fix anyways, because they could have just went to ChatGPT and it would have answered it for them. So this time I'm actually going to put all the lab assignments too on there, because it's not going to make any difference, honestly. They could have went to a private source to do ChatGPT. It's just I was worried as an instructor kind of certifying, yes, here's the lab and it'll answer the lab for you. So there's a little bit of prompt engineering that boundaries on research is. Thanks.
I'm recording it. You'll have to ask the specific presenter if they would like to share their slides. Yes. Is this one? 5-ish minutes. Please repeat the questions. Make sure that I'm not asking.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Peter Arthur. I'm a professor of teaching in the Okanagan School of Education. And I've been doing a fair amount of research around artificial intelligence. I'm working with a group down in Australia where we're doing a lot with finding out how are students using AI. And this particular research that I'm doing is actually on pre-service teachers. But today, I'd like to focus on something a little bit different and that's reading. Because students are using AI for many different things, but reading has many positive things, but it also has some challenges as well. So to start with, I want you to think for a moment, how are you using AI for reading? Are you using it in any significant way? I know myself, I use Google Notebook quite a bit. I'll throw 3 or 4 PDFs on a topic in. I can then search, ask it questions. The answers are linked directly to the different articles. It just helps me. And I can do a summary. I can say, summarize it into a 5-minute read. Or I can say, what are the critical points? And it gives me quite a bit. Now, it works well for myself because I know the discipline quite well. But if you don't know the discipline quite well, there are challenges. But I want to talk about how are students leveraging AI for reading as a tool, and what are the positives and what are the negatives. So there's about 10 articles right now on researchers who have looked at students and reading. I'm going to provide just a few sample examples from those readings out there, the journal articles and what they found. So 53% of students feel using AI to summarize is acceptable. I think now would be a little bit more, and 36 use it as a private tutor. So when there's challenges, if they're reading outside their discipline, they can use AI to help explain any challenging concepts. And a big article, and it only makes sense. So groups, I'm going to use international students for a moment. Groups like international students who might be coming and maybe a language might be a little bit of a barrier, report higher rates of using. Actually, the study that I looked at from Australia said 100% of the international students taking philosophy courses across a number of disciplines use AI consistently. And that helps them with the reading, but it helps them understand the articles. Now, the question is, do your students engage with your course readings? Well, what a lot of students are saying is time, right? Time is a big thing, and the complication. They find it challenging. And a third, which I was talking to Raymond earlier, a lot of them, if it's a book, a textbook, they don't even buy it, but that's a separate thing. So time and complication, and AI can assist with both. They can be a time saver and help explain any of the challenging concepts to the students. Now, some of you may remember 20 years ago, the reading tools. This was my research actually, just over 20 years ago. I worked with the Public Knowledge Project and Open Journal Systems to develop these reading tools. This was the version that I worked on and did some research on. But the whole idea of reading tools is to make reading more accessible to everyone. And that's what our goal was with these reading tools. How many remember those tools that went down the side, open journal systems of a lot of articles? This whole idea. And now AI has the same idea, is to help readers with helping them understand it and making it more accessible. Now, what do we know about learning though? If we think about what learning is, it's that challenge. It's that engagement, which is really important. So it can be dangerous if students are over-relying on AI. So if they over-rely on the summaries and they lose that critical engagement and actually the critical thinking, which can cause challenges because they really need to engage with that. So they're critical. The downside is if they're over-relying on AI, it can decrease their engagement and their practice at critical reading skills. And that's kind of that downside of it. And I use some of you are old enough to remember in the 60s and 70s, before calculators came, we were very proficient with numbers. And then all of a sudden calculators came, and I felt the next generation over-relied on calculators so that their mathematical skills just weren't the same as the generation before. Similarly, with the AI tools, if we over-rely on the AI-generated summaries, it can cause some lack of practice in the reading skills. So what we need to do is help teach them how to critically read and keep that in mind to direct teach. So it's a balance going on. You want to save them time. You want to make things accessible. You want the AI to help explain the readings or concepts to students, but at the same time, you want that critical reading development. And I'll stop there for any thoughts on that. I'll stop there. Yes, Tanya.
So very interesting, because I'm at this point where I think not that many students, especially if we get later in the term, read course reading. And my thought has been, do I potentially work towards a 2 to 3 page summary of the readings that would likely increase the percentage who come in with the pre-read done? And I'm curious, because I thought, well, maybe I would do the summary, but then as you talk, well, maybe they would do the summary, but then over the line. So any thoughts on whether as the teacher or instructor that we start to do some of that summary work and then embed the critical thinking questions for them in the summary versus getting students to summarize what we posted in AI?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question is, do we kind of operationalize the summaries and have critical thinking questions with it? Or do they use AI to do all this? Well, it depends what your objective is. Do you want students to learn how to use AI effectively? If that's one of your competencies, then you should have the students do it, have them have that output, but then they need to critically analyze what output are they given is the key piece, is to analyze, and whether they can do that properly if they're outside of that knowledge base. But AI does a nice job just summarizing the goods. If you ask it questions about certain things, it brings a lot of bias into the picture, but it's good at just kind of summarizing, giving the main points. But the challenge would be, I would think the students would then use AI for those critical questions as well. So you would have to work around that. Raymond? Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It goes back to competencies. What's your objective of them interacting with the reading? Is it to learn? Is it to critically think? Is it to learn a competency that they'll be using in the real world, which is engaging with AI? And they need to learn how to engage properly with AI. Is it time?
Last question.
Barb. Yeah, it has its potential, right? You're having them annotate a reading or having AI annotate the reading and engagement. And that engagement, as long as it's the real interaction and that they're thinking about it, that's where the learning is going to happen. It's interesting about that annotate. Oh, thank you very much.
The Zoom chat was commenting on your first picture of a really cool laptop design. That one there. The double-faced laptop. Yes. Virtual presentations. So there's supposed to be a blank slide at the beginning?
Yeah,
Yeah.
cold open, baby.
Okay, we could have center view that.
That's fine. Is the see that, sorry?
Don't click it yet. Okay, now click it. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. There's your chat.
We'll start with a story. It's not my story. Story told to me by a former colleague of ours, Dr. Sandra Peacock. She was in our anthropology department. It's a story told to her directly and indirectly by these two women, Dr. Mary Thomas and Lily Harry, both elders of the Secwepemc. It's a story about this plant. Go and walk on any hillside in the valley right now, and this plant is blooming. You've all seen it. What you haven't seen is the taproot that grows in the ground under the plant. That taproot is about as big as your forearm, and if you know what you're doing, you can eat it. But you need to know what you're doing, because transforming balsam root into food is really, really complicated. Here's what you need to do to cook some balsam root. First, go and get yourself a bunch of balsam root. There's sort of an outer bark covering on the root. Knock that off, put that aside. We'll use that in a second. Dig a big hole in the ground, about 1 meter deep, maybe 1 meter or 2 across. Bunch of rocks down in the bottom of that pit. Put a bunch of wood on top of the rocks. Burn the wood down to ash. Now you have a bunch of hot rocks. We're going to put a big, thick stick that extends vertically out the top of the pit. Place down a thin layer of that bark that we just knocked off the roots. Put on top of that some fir branches. You need to go up into the tree line, cut these fresh off the tree. You can't just pick them up off the ground. Pour a bunch of water on those fir branches. I need that nice and damp. We're going to put the roots we're going to eat on top of the fir branches, more fir branches on top of the roots, big thick layer of earth on top of that. Pull out that vertical stick. There's a channel, runs all the way down to the hot rocks. Pour water down that channel. The entire pit fills up with steam. Pack it up with earth, more wood on the top, set fire to it, walk away for 3 days. And when you come back, you can unpack that whole pit and eat the roots. This is an extremely sophisticated, extremely complex, and very precisely engineered indigenous technology. You got to do these steps in this order or this doesn't work. Now, if, for example, you decided to tell this story to a large class of chemistry students on the first week back in January in the second semester of our first year chemistry course, you might have some questions related to the chemistry that's going on in the pit. My name is Steve McNeil. I'm in our Department of Chemistry, and this is a story that we've been telling our first year chemistry students for 3 years now. Here's some questions that you might ask of those first year chemistry students. And the answers to these questions can be revealed over the arc of a typical second year chemistry course. Here's what's going on in the pit. The problem is that the majority nutrient in that root is a complex carbohydrate. It's called inulin. It's a polyfructose. These are fructose molecules chained together. Glycobiologists have developed a nice symbolic representation of those fructoses as a chain of green pentagons. You cannot digest this complex carbohydrate because you are not a cow. But if we break all those green pentagons apart from one another, using what's called a hydrolysis reaction, hydro, water, lysis, breaking, I can turn that into individual fructose molecules, individual green pentagons, and I can use that like any other simple sugar, any other simple carbohydrate as an energy source. So how do you do that? Well, you need that cooking pit. What we're doing is the molecules are complicated. The mechanism is actually pretty straightforward with just a little bit of chemistry. There's 4 basic steps to turn our long chain of green pentagons into a slightly shorter chain where I've cleaved off 1 green pentagon. Here, symbolically, is what we're doing. There's a chain. I'm gonna use an acid. I'm gonna put a proton on that chain. I'm gonna break this bond, the lysis. And once I've broken that bond, a water molecule is going to come in and replace it, the hydro. And now I've cleaved off my last green pentagon in the chain. I put a proton on. I have a proton here. I'm going to put the proton on, take it back off again in the last step. This mechanism, this process explains all of the steps in that pit, why each of those steps was necessary. Breaking bonds requires a lot of energy. And so you need a very high temperature for a very long time. Hot rocks below, fire on top, 3 days. Water is consumed every time that you cleave off a green pentagon. You need 1 water molecule to generate 1 molecule of fructose. So you need a lot of it, and it has to get into the roots. So it has to be in a steamed form so it can penetrate the solid state in the root matter. And you need an acid. You need an acid catalyst. Where's the acid coming from? Well, it turns out that if you do a steam distillation of conifer fir needles, this entire paper is basically just 1 table. It goes on for about 6 pages. And if you flip down to halfway through page 4, what you find is that the steam distillate of Douglas fir is 50% everybody's favorite plant secondary metabolite, shikimic acid, pKa 4.15. The steam pulls a water-soluble volatile acid out of the Douglas fir branches and penetrates it into the roots to catalyze the reaction. So to understand everything that's going on in that pit and to answer every one of these questions, you need a little bit of kinetics and a little bit of thermodynamics and some acid-base chemistry and maybe a little bit of organic chemistry and some reaction mechanisms. And that is exactly one for one the outline for our second semester course. And so what we do is we tell this story at the beginning of the semester and put those questions up on the page and answer nothing and let them sit with that for a while. But then we talk about kinetics and we come back and we answer some of the questions. And then we talk about thermodynamics and we come back and we answer some of the questions. And then we talk about acid-base chemistry, fir branches, baby. And then we come back and we talk about organic chemistry and it all makes sense. So this is some Indigenous knowledge that we've incorporated throughout our entire semester and the entire syllabus of our second term first year introductory chemistry course. We've introduced that framing context into our first year chemistry classes. There's a detailed understanding of the underlying chemistry in that process revealed by an application of first year chemistry principles. We come back and we revisit and revisit and revisit that topic over and over and over again through the arc of that semester. The knock-on effects have less to do with chemistry and more about an appreciation and for the sophistication and the complexity of that Indigenous knowledge. Douglas fir needles contain a lot of shikimic acid. Follow that QR code. There's a paper I published in January. You can read more about it. That is my time. I welcome any question. Raymond. So the question is there, given the new underlying understanding of the chemistry, is there any sense or any opportunity to sort of look back at the Indigenous technology and improve upon it? Obviously, with modern technology, I think we could come up with, an industrial boiler that accomplishes the same thing. Sure. Our aim with this actually, and it's something we're very careful about, is to specifically avoid any suggestion that what we're doing here is looking at this quaint, lesser than Indigenous knowledge and then Western science saves the day. That's not what you want to do. No, I understand that, but I think there's an implication there of that could be that given our new scientific understanding, we could improve upon it. There is an element here of, unfortunately, this is no longer an Indigenous technology that's actually practiced, and so it's not something that you would then suggest going into the community and improving upon. Instead, what we see in student responses is kind of a wonder and an awe at how every specific element of that cooking pit has its role to play. That it's this crazy, random, seemingly bizarre complexity, but every single step is necessary. And if you remove one step, the whole thing won't work. And you can understand and explain why that is. Hi there. How are you, Tamara? A question that we have, I think, every year since we've done this. There's a question that simply says, hey, we told you this story. The presence of water as steam in the pit is critical to its success for a number of different reasons. Explain why the water needs to be steam in terms of kinetics or thermodynamics or acid-base chemistry or organic chemistry. A couple of sentences refer it back to the principles, and that's been. It's a satisfying question to ask. It's a less satisfying question to grade. It's not the most successful question on the test. Yeah. Raymond, one more. Okay. I have colleagues at both. The question is, you tried to replicate this chemically. Stander ran field studies. She made her own pits and she published a paper, which is how I learned about this, to see what was going on, and sent the roots out for carbohydrate analysis to monitor the transformation. I have colleagues at Vancouver Island University and Thompson Rivers University who are trying to turn this into a second-year organic chemistry lab. They're bringing it into a laboratory space and seeing if they can replicate and duplicate this transformation. The challenge is it's really, really slow, and so to figure out how to monitor the conversion to fructose on the time scale of a 3-hour laboratory, I think is going to be a challenge. But so me, no, but in two different senses of the word, yes, others have done that work. Thank you.
Did I have yours downloaded already, or is it in my inbox? Okay. 80s. Download. Okay. This one? That look right? Oh. Slide changer, you need it.
Thank you. You'll give me a warning.
I'll give you 1 minute heads up when it's been 4 minutes.
Great.
All right, we're gonna start going again.
So hi, everyone. My name is Katie Kyle, and I'm a lecturer in human geography. And I'm talking a little bit today about both reconciliation in terms of, you know, the actions that we're all taking, but also sort of my personal reconciliation in terms of understanding my own Métis heritage and how that contributes to how I teach. And so I added a further title to this called Walking in My Grandmother's Moccasins, Baby Steps to Reconciliation. And the image in the background is an example of some Métis moccasins. So, went the wrong way. There we go. So just in terms of pointing out a few of my grandmothers, my 4 times great grandmother was actually referred to as the first white woman in Western Canada. And she's also, you know, effectively a founding member of the Métis Nation. And then my second great grandmother I'm going to point to is my actual great grandmother. There, that's me. It's probably about 1983 or 4. And that's my grandfather. And so that other one was her great grandmother. And, you know, in terms of this great grandmother, Louise, she was actually born while many of the Métis people were living in exile in the United States. And she was born on the land. She was a fluent Michif speaker, but like so many Métis of her generation, they gave up that identity to come back to Canada and become, you know, your typical homesteaders. But I'm not that far removed, right? There I am sitting with her. And so one of the reasons that I want to point to my family history, and then also here a collection of my sort of academic and work history, is I'm going to specifically talk about an incident that happened where a student came up to me and we had a wonderful conversation, a very emotional conversation about sort of things I was doing wrong. And so I come into this with an Indigenous heritage. I come into this with a BA in anthropology, field work in archaeology in BC, working directly with Indigenous people, 6 years as a researcher for Indian Residential Schools Resolutions Canada. I was the late Greg Younging's research assistant when he was the director of research for Truth and Reconciliation. So I feel like I'm coming into this with a lot of knowledge, and yet I was still doing it wrong. And it took listening to that one Indigenous student just to see that one example. So this is referring to a specific incident in September 24. You know, about a week before Truth and Reconciliation Day, I was doing a lecture on political geography as part of a broad first-year course, specifically on colonialism. And our beautiful first-year geography textbook definitely talks about colonialism like it's a thing of the past, like it's done. So I have a few slides talking about specific ways it's still very present and lived in Canada. And I start by talking about terminology, and I direct them to this great page from Indigenous Foundations at UBC. And these are just the slides, just very, very quickly. There's about 9 of them. There's a few others that I didn't bother including with some graphs, and I just give examples of, like,
the sort of the history of it and how it exists today. And so it was after this that the student came and talked to me and specifically talked about my use of the one word, which I've already used today in a very specific context. It was the actual name of the branch of the government I worked for. And she acknowledged like that I had acknowledged that I had said, I'm only using this in these, specific ways. And so we went through sort of all of them. And then the other issue she raised was in terms of some of the historic imagery. And so as a historical geographer, as a person who's done a lot of historical research, I always flock to evocative historical photos, knowing that they're biased, knowing that they're staged. The students don't necessarily know that. And of course, just as they did then, they serve to glamorize the situation, right? And highlight the assimilationist practices. So these are the sort of the different things we went through. We reviewed the material together and identified all the places where I could remove the frequency of certain terminology and make different selections about my photos. So these are just some key changes that I made. So as you can see, most of the slides are quite similar, but just to highlight here, for example, I switched, in the context, I really don't need to use the full name of them. Residential schools clearly covers it, right? I was definitely habitual for me to do that. And then in terms of the images, right, just a key change there. I still have an image of a school. It's still a historic photo, but now it's, just removing that, very overt religious presence and that role there. And so just very quickly to close up here, around the same time, and I always release this lesson page. And so she and I went through it together to identify some key changes I could make. Again, at her suggestion, we found this image from the ONA, where I've linked it there. So much more positive, but still reflective piece. And then unfortunately, it's underneath the UR screen sharing, but right here it says like actionable or things you can do. I've moved that right up to the top because that long introduction was really serving as a barrier to students, right? So now it's like, oh, well, what can I do? This is what I can do. And just my closing thought was something else that she said to me that she'd learned from her grandmother was, we talk about Indigenous people like they're a part of Canadian history, but their history goes back much further and Canada's only a small part of that. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah, Tamara.
I thank you for sharing this. I think we've all had the critical vulnerability, and it's difficult. Impartial to the feedback we're getting, particularly when we have a strong position on it, when we have history in it, when maybe. So I really appreciate not only how you chose to approach this scenario instead of putting up a boundary with the student, but also the benefits of sharing. You are really this moment as well, this moment. How important it is to be vulnerable and accept that vulnerability and work to do better, just work to do better.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing because you're really good at sharing it.
Yeah, thank you very much for that comment. And just for those on Zoom, if you didn't hear, to sum up, Tamara was just, bringing up the vulnerability and receiving feedback and action on it. And kudos goes to that student though, because I have received, that written feedback from students and no recourse, no conversation and no actionable items. She literally gave me actionable items. So definitely very much. And she and I have talked since and I've, brought it up again and thanked her for that. So yeah, thank you.
I'm just gonna echo what Tamara was saying, and thanks for sharing this. Glad that I'm here. It just makes me think about the images that we use, and glad that everyone who's in this room gets this knowledge. I believe this is amazing knowledge, and yes, things that we all need to take into our.
Yeah, So just in terms of yes, knowledge dissemination, I mean, really, just talking to people about it and acknowledging that we all have more to learn about that. And I think too, I mean, I include historic photos like that because I find them interesting, or I always have, and I don't always stop to think about what it's showing and what messages it's creating. So with any resource, right, whether it's an image, whether it's a reading we're sharing, we sometimes need to stop and think a little bit more about the hidden messages, right, I think within them. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I just also like to recognize that it's been a real journey for you, because I remember the previous year, right, we items and just the SDI comments at the end that wondering, well, what did I do wrong? But I'm wondering what maybe changed. I mean, it could be an individual student, but I'm wondering what you did in terms of maybe anything that allowed us to come to, approach you. And also I'm wondering if you're going to share anything with future classes about, like, these, this content, I've changed it based on, student feedback, so I'm wondering how to keep that momentum.
Yeah, and so Barbara's question was just, oh, sorry. Yeah. Barbara's question was just about, how I continue to create opportunities for students to give feedback and help them understand that it is evolving. I mean, definitely, again, some of it I think goes down to the individual student, that clearly this girl is already and will be a leader in her community. So that I think is part of it. But just continuing to make it known to students that I am open, that it is evolving for me and for them, and just being open to that. So yeah, I definitely let them know. I mean, I make mistakes too. Oops, I forgot to update that. From last, so I do try and make it clear to them that we're all flawed and nobody's perfect. So yeah, I think that's the key thing.
Thank you so much. One more presentation today. Yes, that's you. Is it just the Canva page here that all we're sharing here?
Yeah, and then there's different.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yes, and then you get to,
Okay.
I'm just boring, I'm just gonna talk. So today, Anita and I are here to talk about a project that addresses EDID through student voices. We all know that UBC has made an institutional commitment to EDID through several strategic initiatives. There's the Indigenous Strategic Plan, the Inclusive Action Plan, there's the ARI Task Force, the Trans and Two-Spirit and Gender Diversity Task Force, among others. And so UBC developed the STAIR framework as a roadmap to be able to record all that's being done. But I guess the critical question here is, how are we assuring that this work is being done in a meaningful way and it's not merely performative? Another question is, are students seeing and feeling the impact of these actions that we're doing? And is there a safe space for students to share their experiences and contribute to this change? I'm going to tell you about the Respect magazine. It launched in 2022. Respect, the acronym, stands for Representation and Equity in Systemic Practices to Affect Change Today. It is faculty and student-led magazine to help with the understanding of EDID on campus. It's a quasi-academic space that promotes the transfer of learning beyond the classroom and in the forms of creative submissions. So it could be artwork, poetry, essays, interviews, and many others. And I know that Anita's going to show you some of them. In the last 3 years, there have been over 7 different issues, and there's been over 50 different student takeaways. it's more than a publication. It's a space for dialogue, reflection, and critical thinking. This Student as Partners initiative shows that if students are actively involved in the EDID conversations, the work becomes more meaningful. They're more relevant, accountable, and more impactful.
Thank you. And continuing on with that, this slide is just a representation of how we locate ourselves in this work. And it's wonderful to, continue from what Katie talked about. And the question, Rishma, that you asked about how do we take it out into the community? And that's something we are constantly thinking about. How do we take it to the community? If not now, when do we take it out there and talk about it and have a conversation about it? Try and see if this moves. Right, so we set up some project goals with the students, of course, and focused really on building communities of care, safe environments, fostering empirical, critical, anti-racist, and anti-discrimination practice on campus, facilitate open dialogue and remain accessible to the community. The community would speak to us, and accordingly, we would figure out our issues around the subject matters areas, promote multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary ways of learning, something that Rishma talked about in terms of allowing multiple genres to come and so people speak in their language. We are still not ready, I suppose, in terms of publishing different languages and making that multilingualism really stand out, but perhaps in the future and not too far away future, we are able to utilize technology in its best ways and kind of approach it that sort of a way. Maybe we should talk about that, Rishma. And finally, of course, is the demonstrative aspect of community engagement and how are we engaging the community in this work, and how's the community responding to it? So very briefly, really, this is a listing of, not really asking you to read through, but having gone through this process of developing, creating issues with students, and then publishing this material, for having the conversations with each one of the authors. We have been fortunate to look through, read through, review with students the material that they're submitting for us, and seeing how they shape the whole narrative in a very different way has been super interesting. So this is just a kind of bringing it to the fore, what we have published based on what students have given us in a very black and white sort of a way. But talking about black and white, it's all very colorful, right? Like the thoughts that students have, what they notice in our spaces, it just kind of wakes you up to recognize that, oh, okay, lights in the classroom make a difference to how we learn. How many screens and how bright they are make a difference to how people learn and engage. So this is just one of the published pieces. I take the image from there, a little quote already embedded that the students embedded, having done surveying around on campus. And it says, I don't feel a sense of belonging in any of the study spaces on campus. And yes, it's probably that just one student viewpoint that we are catching right there, but something to think about in talking about belongingness that we do in institutional strategies. We talk about it in our own spaces. We want our curriculum to respond in that sense, our teaching and learning to be, accommodating and bringing people in. And yet there is still that notion of, belongingness and how students perceive it. So equity on campus stood out as an instance, really given, it being a lightning talk, I am only offering a few examples here. As you can see, the quote under equity on campus talks about, to me, equity on campus means giving equal opportunities to students to explore their academic and non-academic interests. The shift from what is being taught in class and how it applies to where we walk around, sit and learn and eat and, have a community. And how do we do it? Food security showed up and among, I mean, this is just me cherry picking today to just bring up some examples. But again, talking about food security, talking about picnic, if you attended our Monday panel session with students, they also recognize the different pieces they have created and how and why and what engagement they're trying to highlight. The final slide that I have here is just kind of highlighting the different genres that we have been fortunate enough to bring up with the magazine. And this is just an instance of an art exhibition that happened at UBCO in 2022. What I want to highlight here is, of course, the student comment about how the piece itself is powerful. And through the author, I see the walls in our society. Sorry, Canva decided to end that. But talking about the walls that exist and how the readers are kind of capturing it. And most of our readers are, of course, students who have published and who belong with us alongside and take a look and feel certain things. And I suppose we are still learning of how to capture those comments better and represent them with. I have, Rishma. Thank you.
Yeah. Glad you picture them all in there. And what is the other D? Like EBID?
Oh, decolonization.
Thank you.
No worries. Interesting about this magazine is that I've learned a lot. So Anita and I, we sit on the editorial board, so we see all the submissions. It's been fascinating. I've actually changed my teaching strategies based on what students are saying. And it's from students in a whole bunch of different faculties across campus. And it's been really helpful for me. And I asked the students on the panel on Monday is how do we get more instructors for teaching? Because this is really important stuff that the students are saying. I'm learning from them. How do we get more people? And even on leadership and on the campus and if anyone has answers, I'm asking you questions. Yeah, do you have all the answers?
I don't know, but it made that. But actually made a link given that. And I think many of us now do little breaks in our lectures. And one thing I started doing last year is kind of making it like a well-being, or what students could think about to improve even study habits or well-being habits, and bring little Instagram videos in. But these are so colorful, and not on infographics, and just ways in which we could have this as displayed on our, at the start of our lecture or in the middle of the lecture, for students to kind of see and hear other student voices and how powerful that could be. And then that helps them understand that this on campus, they contributed. It's just sometimes just showing students what other students are doing and talking about that thing can be pretty powerful. Yeah. So I just want to share an observation that I've had from my students. A lot of international, even within our own, if we just think about derivatives drawn. There's a lot of lack of clarity. Just truth reconciliations is a completely more concept, right? And they come from spaces often that are very foreign to this. So I think that's one of the challenges that we need to appreciate as well, is that is complex in and of itself as well. And I think that challenge is I still have students saying you really shouldn't be in front of a class. right? But it's where they come,
Mhm.
and it's what they know. So to add this is, well, very powerful. If there's a lot of resistance. So I just wanted to share that as an observation. It's a lot more complex and complicated than how we get this out there. It's getting it out there. So that's
And if I may, I think you, recognize the challenge really well. But the challenge itself is quite beautiful because the way this gets unpacked is Rishma and I benefit from hearing and listening and reading all the contributions. But most of the contributions, there are contributions by individual students, of course, that are published, but several of them are engagements that they have done with others, peers who are around them. So this lack of knowledge or building on knowledge that we aspire for, that we find ourselves really, trying to appreciate within our teaching and learning spaces, they are doing it. Just bringing it to the conscious level is one of the tiny attempts of the magazine itself, I think, of seeing how they're doing it. And yes, there are multiple voices behind who agreed, disagreed, joked about it, talked about it in different ways, but ultimately something floats up. And to be able to capture that without the necessary rigidities that we find in our, peer review.
And just the discourse that starts. I know there's being very mindful. I'll be really quickly. There's one submission. It was about safe spaces or not brave spaces. And I think a lot of people, and I've heard it time and time again, that they say, oh, we're gonna change our, like I've heard instructors and I've heard like on committees, and we're gonna make it a brave space. And the student, and I never realized this, but told their instructor and then felt actually it's a really interesting piece on the website, but felt that by calling it no longer a safe space, calling it a brave space, meant to the student that you're telling the marginalized student that you need to be better and be brave, like you need to be more vulnerable. And they didn't like that at all. They liked it better when it can just be a safe space. And I had no idea because everyone's throwing around have a brave space. Now I'm like questioning things. So just the dialogue. And sorry, you're gonna say something, Barbara.
I mean, I think there's gonna be.
Yeah.
Been in some. Create something that we like published. So what do you tell people? So when you want to faculty and reach out to engage with if they, if they would like to.
Yeah, send us an email if you have a good idea about your projects and it has to do with equity and you might want to think of and help, and your students might help tell us what the next issue is going to be. And if that aligns with your class and a potential project, students have been really happy with getting a publication and the chance to present. Now, this is twice a couple of years ago with Center for Teaching and Learning for Celebration Week. So it's been really helpful for them in their career as well. Go ahead, Anita, you're going to add to that.
No, totally. We have the submission guidelines and everything set up. It is difficult to work on it without students. So you have other sustainable measures, ideas, send it our way, right? We are wanting to connect and get there. Right, it's here.
We've got a few minutes really. We do have 10:30 meetings and we're in a far corner of campus. I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for joining us for the lightning talk session. Thank you to the Zoom folk. If you want to stick around and talk, you may do so. If you have any questions from the Zoom world, just email me, riley.batillion@ubc.ca, and I can find the presenters and get them to answer your questions for you too. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of Celebrate Learning Week. Have fun at the other sessions. And the keynote, yes, please come to the closing keynote Friday at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. Closing keynote Friday. See you all there.